Hi folks. I was thinking recently that I hadn't talked a huge amount about my relationship with the Morrigan in a while, and I thought that maybe it might be time for me to do another video on her and sort of update you on my ideas about what she is to me, and what deities are. And I thought as well that I might just kind of run through my current understanding of the divine, how I approach the divine in my spiritual practice, in ritual. I kind of started getting thinking about this again very recently, the last couple of days, because I was reading a blog post, a fairly old blog post by John Halstead of The Allergic Pagan, and he was writing about panentheism. Now, panentheism is similar to pantheism, but in another way quite different, in that pantheism is the belief that the universe is divine, so the all is divine and the divine is the universe. So it is, as he puts it, kind of A equals B. Panentheism, on the other hand, is the idea that the universe is part of the divine, but that the divine also transcends the universe. So the universe is the divine, but it's not all of the divine. That there is some part of divinity that in some way transcends our experience, that transcends this universe, that transcends existence perhaps. And then of course there is kind of traditional transcendent monotheism, which is that God is what transcends the universe and is not actually the universe, and that, you know, the universe is not a part of God, it is his creation. I say his because most often those philosophies do tend towards a sort of a male personal deity, but of course not all. And so those, he kind of outlines those as three main theisms. Of course there is also polytheism. Polytheism is kind of a whole other story, where a lot of the time the gods are seen, polytheism is the belief in many gods, but often the gods are actually seen as being kind of part of the universe, but they don't transcend it, they don't even consist of all of the universe, they're just contained within it, which is a very different kind of idea about divinity. I almost feel that they are two different things, that the search for divinity in the ground of being, or the all, or something kind of all-encompassing, is slightly different to a belief in deities that are sort of part of this universe in a similar way that we are. It's definitely a different way of seeing things. Also, some polytheists can also be pantheists, if they're dualistic pantheists, for example, who believe that all is divine. But that they believe that all contains both matter and spirit, so therefore spirit can be broken down perhaps into the different deities, or expressed in the form of different deities. But while I was reading his post, it kind of got me thinking about the fact that I call myself a pantheist, and I realised that maybe I'm not actually a pantheist, maybe I'm actually a panentheist. And this is actually quite a hard distinction to make. Now, John himself says that he generally considers himself to be a panentheist, because he, like myself, is quite big on the idea of the unmanifest, and something that the divine is both immanent, as in everything that we see in the universe, tangible, and that we are divine, everything around us is divine, immanent in that the divine is here, but also that the divine is transcendent. And for him, the idea of the other is very important, and I think that is very definitely true when it comes to feelings of awe and the experience of the divine. And the feeling of the divine being other to us is quite important in triggering that experience and triggering that feeling. So it kind of makes sense to, particularly for people like myself and John, to actually think of ourselves maybe as being panentheists. So I started to think that maybe I'm not a pantheist after all, maybe I'm actually a panentheist. You could kind of say that this is just kind of semantics and it's not really that important. The important thing is that I believe that the cosmos is divine, and that the divine is cosmos. But I suppose when it comes down to that philosophical distinction, it is kind of important, because it's the difference between saying A equals B, or A equals B but also something else. So in logical terms it is actually an important distinction to make. You might or might not think that it is important for you to make that distinction, of course. But I am finding it tricky to actually decide for myself if I think that the unmanifest part of the divine is actually part of cosmos, part of the universe, or not, if it transcends it. It kind of all depends on where you draw your line on what can be included in, say, as part of, like, our Earth is part of the universe, so can the unmanifest be part of that same one thing? And I think it gets a bit tricky, because if you're a monist, everything is all one material, everything is all connected and all one thing, and existence is almost by definition is one thing. So then if you start straying into is there something beyond existence? That starts to get very tricky if you're a monist, and this is where I'm having difficulty, like I say, deciding if I actually fall under pantheism or panentheism. So that probably was a bit rambly and confusing, so I'm going to kind of go back to the start and walk you through my understanding of the divine and how I express the divine in my spiritual practice at the moment, because I have talked about this a bit on the channel, off and on, but it is something that has evolved gradually for me over time. It is something that I have had several sort of aha moments, and that my practice has sort of changed. I can't say that my feeling about the divine has changed in any really fundamental way, and I can't even say that my beliefs have changed in any fundamental way. For me, it's all about finding symbols and symbolic structures that best sort of encapsulate that feeling that I have about the divine and what I understand, how I understand the universe to work, and those kinds of things. So essentially, for a long time there, I was conflating two different binary systems. I had the binary system of creation and destruction, which I feel is really, really integral to our universe, to cosmos, to goddess, and to how everything works. I've explained before that while I do feel that this binary system is important for my own understanding of how things work, they definitely are interconnected for me. They're not two separate forces or things. They're just two different ways of understanding one big process that is cosmos, but they're very useful because they sort of give me a very powerful way of tapping into that amazing creative process that is cosmos. So creation and destruction have been important for me for a long time. But also I had this binary of the manifest versus the unmanifest. And this is something that has gotten quite convoluted for me. And for quite a long time I was associating the manifest with creation and the unmanifest with destruction. And it took me a while to realise that actually these two binary systems are separate. And I've come now to a point where I acknowledge cosmos as consisting of sort of the best way to describe it, actually, I have described my interaction with deities before as sort of looking through a lens, or them being a one little facet on the all. But probably an easier or better way to describe all of my interactions with the divine and with personal deity and with big symbols like creation and destruction and stuff like that is actually the Russian doll. And I have a Russian doll on my altar, actually. I've had one there for a really long time. Russian dolls have always been very potent symbols for me, and I've had several since I was a small child. And I never even thought of putting one on my altar until I saw Kellyanne with one on her altar at one time, Kellyanne of the Four Queens. And it just really just came, you know when you just have that moment, you see something that somebody does and you're like, oh my god, why didn't I think of that myself? That just fits. That's so symbolically apt for me. Like, it just really encapsulates some really basic feeling that I have about the divine. And that symbol of the Russian doll has become more and more important for me the more I delve into my understandings of cosmos and the divine and goddess and things like that. So I've got to the point now where I see sort of you can kind of see it as at levels. You have the unmanifest and you have the manifest. Within the manifest is creation and destruction. So it's kind of like you can also see it as a tree. The further you go up the tree, the more it splits off into different sort of, you can look at it in more and more detail the further you go up. But for me, the unmanifest is actually turned into the outer shell of that Russian doll. The unmanifest, and I'm going to get back to talking about what the unmanifest actually means for me in a minute. I have a name, a kind of a private secret name that I had given to the unmanifest. I was calling it goddess for a while, but I actually have a name now. I generally refer to it as she or her, but it's not necessarily that I think of it as being gendered. It's just that I like to address her as as a thou and not as an it. And to do that because we don't actually have kind of naturally occurring neutral pronouns. I'm really bad with English grammar, but you know what I mean. In the English language, it kind of has to be her or him. So, you know, if you're having that kind of personal kind of connection. So I like to use her. But the name is gender neutral. So within then that outer shell, we have the manifest, and this is our cosmos as we know it. This is the universe. This is what we can see, and this is whatever is beyond what we can actually see of the known universe. This is all of existence. This is what has come into being. This is what has flared forth, either from the Big Bang, if that was in some way a beginning of something, or this is just, perhaps this is always there. The manifest is always there, and that's my personal belief, is that the manifest didn't just suddenly erupt out of the unmanifest, where there was never any manifest before, if you see what I mean. There was always something, is my personal belief. But the manifest keeps changing and keeps erupting, and you can look at this process through the lenses of the creation and destruction. So I see the act of the manifest kind of coming into being, becoming manifest, manifesting as creation, and then destruction is what happens to the manifest as it falls back into non-being, into the unmanifest. So being and non-being is another way that you could describe these two things. So I'm seeing now that actually creation and destruction for me are components of the manifest, and that they are the act of arising out of and falling back into the unmanifest. So because I'm a pantheist, the manifest is just as divine for me as the unmanifest. But the unmanifest can be seen as, I think, that kind of mysterious transcendental other that we can't quite put our finger on. And that is for me a very important component of the divine and of cosmos and what everything that exists. It's sort of, I mean, scientifically, I suppose you can't really prove whether or not this is an actual thing, the unmanifest. It's just a really potent kind of symbol for me for understanding that which comes before and potential. And to me, in the unmanifest, the unmanifest contains infinite potential. It is infinite. Whereas the manifest is what is and what actually arises. So yeah, you can look at it and see that from the very outer shell, that is all of cosmos. That cosmos is unmanifest and manifest. But you can also look at it, and then, you know, if you look at it that way, I'm definitely a pantheist. But you can definitely also look at it and say, well, the unmanifest, that can't be part of cosmos, that can't be part of existence because it's unmanifested, it's not in being. So that would make me look more like a panentheist, because part of the divine, for me, exists outside of existence. It is that sort of transcendental infinity of possibility. So I hope that kind of made sense. I'm really just kind of unpacking my thoughts about this. I did have a sort of aha moment a couple of months ago. I started drawing a picture, and this all started to become more concrete for me, but putting it into words is always a little bit more complicated. So I also want to make the point with this that kind of going back to the video that I made many months ago about pantheism and labels, that for me, the only label that I have felt really, really confident in for quite a long time is pantheism. But then even pantheism is shaky, because maybe you could say that I'm not a pantheist, I'm a panentheist. So I really want to emphasize how the labels that you use are really not the important thing at all. Labels are mutable. They're just semantics. You will always find somebody who interprets that label in a different way to you. And I think it's really important to not get hung up on those labels. And the important thing is to know where you're at, to know what you feel and what you believe and what makes sense to you and what really resonates with you. And you can kind of call that whatever you like, within limits, obviously. But I think, yeah, the important thing is to not get too hung up on, if you come across somebody, if you call yourself a pantheist and you come across somebody who calls himself a pantheist who has totally different beliefs, take that as an opportunity to learn and grow and to realise just how mutable and shaky our whole language system actually is. And that, that the label is not the important thing. The important thing is that it's coming from heart level and that you are really tuning into the depths of your psyche and what is really going on, what you really truly believe and feel is going on in cosmos. And the other important thing, of course, is the symbols that you use and what kind of symbols really resonate with you and draw that out of you and invoke feelings of reverence, or evoke feelings of reverence and awe and that kind of thing. So moving on from that a little bit, I will just briefly talk about the Morrigan and my understandings of her. Now, I have kind of talked about this before, so I don't think there's anything hugely new in this, probably. But my metaphor of the Russian doll has really helped me to better understand the Morrigan and what she is for me as well, because while the Russian doll obviously contains quite multiple characters, multiple entities, those entities are all actually the same, they're just at different levels, but they actually look the same, and they each kind of contain the seed of the greater part. You can take the tiniest Russian doll and it looks the same as the biggest one, so you can tell from that tiny Russian doll what the biggest one is actually going to look like. And that's kind of how I see levels of divinity as well. The Morrigan for me is more and more as time goes on, I see her as actually just being a part of my mind, and she is me. She is a part of my psyche, a part of my experience of life. She is in many ways a psychopomp. She is that link for me between the mundane and the liminal, between the mundane and the divine, between the mundane and that sort of ritual consciousness that takes you away from your sort of materialistic outlook that your ego generally has day to day, and puts you into a place where you can feel deeper connection with the whole of your psyche, and also deeper connection with the whole of cosmos. And to me, those two things kind of go hand in hand. But as well as just being a part of my mind, she is inevitably, she is a reflection of not only all of existence, but the unmanifest as well. She is a portal, a lens, as I said before, looking onto the divine, because each of us within us, I believe, contain a blueprint of the all. We have all not only come out of that tiny little pinpoint out of which all matter erupted at the time of the Big Bang, but we have all come out of the unmanifest. We have all arisen. Everything has arisen. So therefore we are inevitably connected. We are a part of this huge, this huge infinity of possibility and existence. And it's sort of like when you think about human DNA. Every cell in the human body contains the DNA of the entire human. You can reproduce, theoretically at least, an entire human from the DNA of one single cell. And I definitely see that as a metaphor of my understanding of the entire universe, that every single thing in that universe, every cell of that universe, i.e. every person, every planet, every galaxy, contains within it that blueprint of what cosmos actually is on the larger level. And indeed all the possibility that is contained within the unmanifest, because I do see all of this as just one big expression, one big, I suppose you could say, being, that I like to call goddess. So the Morrigan for me is, she is a microcosm of the macrocosm. She might just be a very particular, she might even be a real person. She might have been an historical character. We don't even know that for sure, because we don't have any contemporary writings of her at the time that the stories about her were being told. All we have are sort of passed down stories that were written down by monks many thousands of years, well, at least 1,000 years or more after her stories were actually being told orally by the people. So we really don't know what she was at the time, if she was even considered to be a deity. But I mean, I definitely think she was. Yeah, who knows where these stories about deities come from? Do they, were some of them real people at some point, or are they simply just manifestations of archetypes deep within our psyches? Whatever they are, even though they are quite specific and they encompass quite specific attributes and associations and things like that, they contain in them that germ of cosmos, that germ of goddess, of existence, of the all. So yeah, I definitely have started to more interact with the Morrigan as a psychopomp, as the gateway for me between the worlds, I suppose, my gateway to the other world. The other world for me is liminal existence, liminal awareness. So that place between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, where I can tap into the whole of my psyche with any luck and tap into my connection with the all. I haven't been working with her as much as I was in the past. I still have a long way to go when it comes to connecting with her, I think. And it can be quite strange to sort of try to connect on a deep level with the deity, because I find anyway that I start hitting this wall, particularly with the Morrigan, where I feel like she's just me or something, and I start to lose sight of her boundaries and what she actually contains and what she doesn't. But she definitely is very fluid for me, and like I say, she can very definitely just be seen as a symbol for the all. But I am finding her energy to be very powerful for me now in embracing that connection between the conscious and the unconscious, in moving in ritual from the kind of early setting up stages into a deeper kind of trance state, and also in connecting between earth and the all, earth and cosmos as a whole, because the Morrigan is very much of the earth. We are very much of the earth. We are absolutely situated in this ecosystem, and this is what we know. So the Morrigan is completely earthly. She is seen as a personal deity, so she is very much rooted in the earth, and in many ways she is representative to me of a lot of the sort of processes of our ecosystem, and the sort of ancient roots of our earth as well, sort of the really old feeling of the mountains and the sea, and the primordial kind of feeling of the land being shaped and that kind of thing. She's very much tied in with that kind of feeling. But then she very definitely acts as a psychopomp for me between that connection, that deep connection to earth and to our physical existence, and to the all. The feeling the connection in the web between our experience here and what it means to be a child of the universe. So I think I'll leave it there. I hope that made sense. There will be a blog post coming up at some point on the question of pantheism versus panentheism when I get around to it. It'll probably be a little bit more, I might unpack those ideas a bit more, be a little bit more academic, but if you're interested in trying to figure out better, if you didn't quite follow what I was going on about there, if you're interested in reading more about that, there will be something coming up about that. And I will link John's blog post below as well, because it's very, very good, and he's an extremely lucid writer, and he's just generally a wonderful blogger, so I would very much suggest that you go and check out his blog post on panentheism as well. Okay guys, until the next time, take care.